Back at it once again with this thing called the Just Start the Conversation podcast. It is brought to you by St. Luke's Penn Foundation. You can visit pennfoundation.org for more information. Back once again with my friend Amy Allenson Dundon. Amy, how are we? It's been so you don't call, you don't write. I worry. How are things? We good?
Hey, Crockett, I'm good. I'm I'm excited for longer days and sunlight and springtime. And overall, I would say living the dream as much as we can be.
Excellent. One day at a time. Tell my little guy, he got up grumpy this morning. I tell him, listen, the day's just begun. He started the day with, this is the worst day of my life. I said, buddy, we might go to school and have the best school day. We might come home and have the best dinner you've ever had. We don't know.
Yeah.
But we're going to make an approach with a cup half full here. So that's what we try to do on this podcast a little bit, is maybe make a dull day, a tough day, a dark day, a little bit brighter with some of the conversations that we have. And certainly another serious conversation ahead of us today. As you and I were kind of getting ready for this conversation. It's going to be around adults and social media. Obviously, social media in and of itself, we could go down a real rabbit hole there with that one. But adults and social media, some of the stressors that come with social media. So I'm interested to just kind of start with you here, Amy, as a person that's in your position and talking to people and helping people work through things. The role of social media from your perspective and how it affects adults is what?
I think social media gets a bad rap. Let's just start there. I think we're real quick to say social media is bad, social media is dangerous, social media is sucking the life out of me, right? So I think the bottom line is that social media is not going anywhere.
Sure.
So we're gonna have to figure out how to deal. And when I was thinking, you and I have talked about social media a gazillion times on our last 40 episodes or whatever. It comes up in it comes up in most episodes, just the topic of social media and its impact on mental health. And I'm excited to be able to have a conversation today where we're just focusing on that. I think one of the things I was thinking about as I was prepping for our discussion today was the things that we teach our kiddos how to do to be safe on social media, emotionally, mentally, and physically, are things that as adults we never really learned. Which is interesting just because of the evolution of social media and our age, right?
Sure.
We teach high school students about social media safety. And I don't know if a lot of us adults know that, but there are a lot of high schools that teach classes or will make sure that they're learning social media safety. So they learn about catfishing, they'll learn about kidnapping, they'll learn about trafficking. But as adults who kind of came into the social media game later, we didn't learn any of that, right? We didn't learn that. So I think as adults, we're consuming social media sometimes differently than the younger folks, just because of what we learned and didn't.
So that's interesting because you started with social media gets a bad rap. And so do you think that is coming from people of our generations because we're looking back and saying we didn't have this knowledge, whereas maybe somebody who's a teenager in their early 20s is saying, oh, well, of course I know to avoid all of these things. We were taught to avoid these things. So it is, when you say it gets a bad rap, are you saying from people just our age, or overall, even with people coming up and learning about it and going through it, working through it?
I think it's both. And I guess I mean, I think the way we perceive the world is really based upon our own individual historical perspective. So I perceive the world based on Amy's life for the past 50 years, right? It's my perspective. So if I grew up in an urban area with high crime, I'm going to perceive my current world, in that light. Even on social media, I'm going to be hypervigilant. I'm going to be looking out for things. So I think we don't dig deep enough, and we're just really quick to give it a bad rap as adults, to say social media is bad, right? Rather than am I looking at things on social media from my own historical perspective that maybe is flawed a little bit, and my experience historically are flawed, and therefore that's what I gravitate towards on social media, right? So I think it's bigger than just us old folks hate social media. I don't think that's true. I think it's just we haven't figured out how to separate our own historical context from current day social media. And our kids are better at that than we are. They just are. And I will say, social media can be dangerous and almost, not almost, and can be addictive, an addictive habit for some people. So there's a right way and a wrong way to use social media, just like there's a right way and a wrong way to use alcohol, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because I was talking to my wife about this topic a little bit, and asked her, just kind of nonchalantly asked her if she had ever felt anxiety over social media. And to me, I would have thought it would have been more the 20 something keeping up with the Joneses kind of a response. Maybe you're just living by yourself for the first time and you're starting to date a little more than you do, just some of those things. And so I asked her, when did you ever feel like the most kind of pressure on social media? And she said, no doubt about it, its height was when I was a new mom. When she was a new mom, and you feel like there's all of these. Listen, our last conversation we talked about a little bit. We talked about perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. We talked about breastfeeding. Maybe that was one of those things that you felt like was going to kind of be a turnkey thing and come so easy. And she said that was kind of the point in her life where, and we've had, since going back to college for me, we've had social media around with Facebook and Twitter. So I'm curious, as we talk about maybe some of the stressors of social media, kind of that kind of reached out to me in a specific kind of way, because she was, late 20s, early 30s when we had our firstborn, and that was when she had her kind of heightened sense of maybe this isn't such a good thing for me. So what are those stressors that you think you find kind of in common for adults when it comes to social media?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, being new moms, new dads, it's social media is really hard. So I certainly appreciate her statement of, being a new mom and then having social media was awful, right? And one of the reasons that I think that's true is because when I think about social media, and when we're talking about social media, I think we can talk about, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, X, all of the biggies is kind of where I'm thinking. And really, I kind of see social media as like our highlight reel, right? Just like in sports, you have in sports, we have a highlight reel that's a collection of our best moments, right? Our wins. So, we're comparing ourselves to others' highlight reels, okay? And all the time, right? And it's directly linked to you. You're on social media watching other people's highlight reels, and you're seeing the highlights of what other people want you to see. That's it. You're seeing their highlight film. Occasionally, they'll throw in a missed tackle, right, on their social media film. But for the most part, that's a big stressor. Is when you're a new mom, you're looking at all of these other new mamas who seem to have it together. Look at they're taking pictures of their newborns at 1 month on the cute little blanket with the circle of the one, and then at 2 months in a different outfit with the cute little circle of 2 months, and everything looks amazing. But you don't see that there were 63 takes of that, and that nobody slept the night before, and this was done at 11:53 p.m. because they forgot to do it during the day. Right, because they didn't have time and they were too depressed and sad, so remember, it's a highlight film. So I think that's a stressor. I think there's also a concept that I'd like to get your opinion on of social currency. And I talked to a lot of adults about social media and social currency, and I think really, if we look at it this way, right, just like the dollar. The currency is something we use to attribute value. So likes, comments, shares, right? I see that as social currency. So I'm putting something out there and somebody's giving me a thumbs up and I just got paid. Like, that's a payment. That's a currency. That's my social payment.
Sure.
Right? So it kind of, and I don't know, I'm sure this is a term, but in my mind, I see it as kind of the economy of attention. So when you give something a like on social media, it becomes a recorded transaction attributing value. So in our social media, we're the product, and we are letting others attribute value to us. Okay? So we're trying to up our self-worth with what others think about it. How many likes does my post have? How many times do you go on social media and look at something you posted on Facebook and keep track of, oh, I got 2 more likes. I got 1 more like. That's good. Oh, I got another comment. What do the comments say, right? So we need more and more social currency to feel good. And that's, I think, where some people may be predisposed to diving down a deep social media hole in order to get more and more social currency.
Sure.
What do you think of that?
Sure.
Theory?
So, I think being in the media, I have friends that are all over the country that are in radio or in television or doing all those sorts of things. And I'll be the first one to admit that sometimes I'll see something go and I'll just be like, you get a little bit of like a damn, that was good. Sometimes it's more the why didn't I think of that aspect of things, and then seeing someone else thrive. But what I will say is, and maybe this is kind of a point that we're making here as we kind of talk about adults with social media and we talk about kids learning in schools. One of the things that I do love on the flip side of that is I wonder at some point we go from being competitive with one another on everything to rooting for each other, to saying there's enough seats at this table, we all can sit down and eat. It's just a matter of how we do it. That was something that for me, maybe in my 20s being in a media career, I thought I didn't think about as much. It was, these are ratings, these are numbers, these are the facts. This is what's here. This is credible. We can look at it. Everything that we're looking at here can tell us exactly what it is. But that's not necessarily true. To your point, someone might post a picture and it might look great and it might get all the likes, but behind them could be loads of piles of laundry and dishes at the sink,
right,
and another baby crying in another room. So I think your tribe, your group, your social, your actual verbal communicating with social group plays such an important role in this, because you can have your cake and eat it too, in my mind, in this situation. And that's what I found more into my 30s, especially when it comes in the field that we're in, is go get it. I don't care about the numbers. Go get yours. There's plenty for me right here. There's plenty for you over here. So I almost engage a lot more with people that are on competing radio stations because I want to see you. I want to see you thrive. Again, there's plenty of seats at this table.
Yeah.
And I wonder at what point your own self-awareness plays a role in that. Do you realize I'm not competing with you? Man, we're all in this thing together. How can I stop seeing what you're doing as a hindrance or a negative to me? And how can I start seeing it in a positive light, in a positive way?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think that following that point, I think it's really important as adults, as women and men, but women tend to consume a little bit more social media than men. Although before I go to my other point, I will say that I found a really interesting statistic that anxiety and depression studies show that 90% of 18 to 29-year-olds are on social media for an average of 2 hours a day. 90%. So if we're talking about adults, we're talking about 18 and up. So 90% of young adults, and I would argue it's probably higher even as we get older and have more downtime, right? 2 hours a day. 70%, I know that, I'm hoping our Canadian friends are listening, but this is a stat that I found interesting. 70% of the Canadian population is on social media. 70%. So I imagine it's pretty similar. So I say that to say we're all using it, right? And when was the last time you completely disconnected from social media, like a true dark out? I would venture to say most people would say, I haven't.
Sure.
You're always connected to it. So what's it doing to us? I think back, I feel like I'm tangential, but I think back to when we were in grade school, elementary school. So the economy of attention is not a new concept. We used to do it with, remember those like flippy, you would like make them into like paper triangle things.
Origami.
And, like the origami.
Yeah.
And you would like, go back and forth with your fingers and there would be different
Yeah.
things written on the inside of them. And you open this flap and then there's it's like some sort of message written to you on the deeper flap. And there's different colors. And so we've been vying for social attention forever. We've just done it in different ways. That was kind of pre-social media. What am I going to flip on, and what is it going to say, and how am I going to feel about that? And then what am I going to write back, or what am I, what's my next flippy origami hand thing gonna say, and what am I going to put on it? And slam books. Remember slam books? God,
Oh, yeah.
I'm old maybe, but we used to do this very differently, but it was the same concept, right?
Yeah.
So.
Oh my gosh.
It's not different. It's kind of like our slam book is now out there for the world to see, unfiltered all the time, which is scary, right? So scary.
Sure.
So I think part of this is, how are you choosing to use social media? It's not going anywhere. And there's some of it that's really cool, right? And it's amazing. But one of the things that I like to talk to people about is really follow only 4 groups. Okay, if we're really going to try to improve our mental health and our social media use, follow only 4 groups. And I say this: friends, family, and positive acquaintances. So when I say positive acquaintances, I mean not negative, not mean, not toxic folks, not toxic sites, right? People who align with your goals. Follow people who align with your goals. If your goal is to open up your own daycare, then follow people who started their own daycares. Watch someone, and this goes with I think I'm tying this, that was a long way for me to get back to your point, but I'm tying this to your peer
we do
group.
a podcast. You can talk as long as you want.
But I'm tying it to you kind of comparing your post to your colleagues' posts in the media,
Sure.
in the media world, right? We want to watch someone who's achieved the success we want for ourselves. So we want to do that in our career. We also want to do that in our personal lives, right? So I would say follow people who inspire you, right? Who gives you the drive to succeed, right? People who are inspiring, right? If you want to be an Olympic gymnast, you're going to want to follow Olympians, right? People who, if you want to be in the Olympics, people with the same, who've achieved that success, people who are inspiring, people with the same disability as you, right? If I'm in a wheelchair, I want to follow other people that are, possibly have similar disabilities that are inspiring to me. I think that's important, right? We want to follow entertainers who are your favorite, right? Those who make you feel good, those who bring you joy. It's okay to follow artists and comedians and sports figures and radio show hosts, right? See?
At Crockett on Air, by the way, if you want to find me on your social media. Yeah. There you go.
And so, but we want to be mindful of the types of entertainment you're consuming, right? We want to follow entertainers who bring you joy.
I want to kind of come back to the point that you made. The statistic again, can you give it to me? That 90% of people?
90% of 18 to 29-year-olds are on social media for an average of 2 hours a day.
So I wonder if you look at, listen, what was the thing when we were always coming up? Get out from in front of the TV, go outside, play, go do something. I think one of the things that, and perhaps this is where we need to find the line for ourselves as adults with social media is you can curate your own experience. Like these search engines and these websites and these apps are smart. So if you start getting down a rabbit hole on one thing, it's going to say, well, let's keep them in the rabbit hole, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Yep.
And so I think when you're talking about 2 hours, you are curating the experience you want versus back in the day where you're flipping through a couple of channels. Maybe you'll find something, maybe you just land on something and you're like, I can't really find anything else, whatever. I think that's a big part of it. So maybe we could talk about that a little bit in terms of curating what you want out of social media. As you say, follow friends and family, like-minded people who inspire you. That conversation a little bit for social media as adults of, hey, you are not going to avoid all of the things that might trigger you in a certain kind of way. However, there's a mute button, there's a block button, there's a hide button, there's all the things that you can do for a lot of these apps that say you, as much as you maybe don't feel in control of what you're seeing, you are very much in control of what it is that you could see on a day-to-day basis.
You sure are. I think, we all, to your point, social media will pick up on, I swear it listens to us too when we're talking.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? I know
100%,
it does, right?
yes.
So right now, my husband and I are looking at we need to get our driveway repaved, right? Had a conversation about getting quotes and estimates to getting our driveway redone. All of my Facebook feed is now asphalt related. Can I just tell you? So if I'm for 2 hours a day, it's not funny because it's driving me crazy.
No, I get it. No, but it's funny, but it's not funny.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So similarly, if I'm following unhealthy, dark, negative things, that's what I'm going to get more of. Right. And it's horrible. And it's about being socially aware, right? We have to audit our social media diet. I think that's important. We have to monitor what goes into our head and our heart, just the same way we have a food diet, right? Did that scroll just make me feel better or did it make me feel worse? Why am I responding this way to that photo, right? Assess it for yourself. When you're sitting there and you're for 1 or 2 hours on social media, be a little bit more mindful of what you're looking at, what you're liking, what you're following, and think of it as, if this were fried food, would I be consuming it for 2 hours? Mm. Okay.
My answer is yes, by the way, but continue. Yes. Yeah.
I know. I mean, not a great example for you and I, but I think for some of our listeners that are a little bit more advanced than you and I think the concept of you are what you eat, right? Can we think about this the same way, right? You are what you consume on social media, which I think is a really powerful thought that I don't know that we all pay attention to, especially women who are consuming ads about what size you should be and what your BMI should be and what other people's pictures with their partners look like and how their babies are dressed and, how they're balancing their time. I think you have to really think about the consequences of your social media diet, I guess is how I sum that up.
Sure. I think one of the things that I want to focus on, and again, I do want to come back to your point on social media getting a bad rap, because I would agree with that point. I think that it can get you in a dark place if you let it get you to a dark place. The flip side of that is I also can say one of the things that I love about social media, and honestly, one of the things, I mentioned my wife as a new mom and a new wife at that point in time, talking about that was the height of her anxiety with social media. Also found pages and forums and groups in those apps that helped her deal with a lot of things that she was thinking and she was feeling at the time. So I want to focus on some of the uber positive things that can come out of social media, and I certainly think that is one of those. If you suddenly there's I'll just use an example as we're talking on the St. Luke's Penn Foundation podcast. If something you're dealing with is your mental health, if something you're dealing with is your physical health, you get a diagnosis, maybe you get a diagnosis of a rare disease and feel like we always talk about the Google trap, but you Google and you go, I don't even know what this is. Well, guess what? You go on Facebook and there's a forum of all these people who have been living with it, who have been dealing with it, who are brand new to it, just like you, who can answer all the questions that perhaps you're thinking about what this might do or might make you feel, or I'm a week in and I'm feeling this. Has anyone felt this before? Can we talk about the positive elements that are there to social media that maybe people either ignore or haven't quite gotten their hands wrapped around yet?
Yeah, I think there are some really great benefits, right? I mean, for people that lack connection, that maybe are isolated or for whatever reason don't get out or can't drive or whatever, I think it's a really good way. Again, if we really think about following those groups that I talked about, people that inspire you, right? And people who are positive, that can lift you up. That can help bring you out of sadness or a darker place and make you feel like, oh, I'm not alone. There are other people who are in the same boat. Like we talked about the last podcast with Andrea, there are other women who are having trouble with breastfeeding, and it doesn't make me a bad person. And wow, I had no idea that these thoughts were kind of normal. So, yes, I think that there is certainly a way for us to improve our self-worth with social media if we're using it the right way and if we're connecting with the right people. If I'm not feeling great emotionally with my mental health, maybe I'm super stressed, maybe I had my first panic attack, and I go on Google and I Google panic attack, stress, anxiety. I can go down two roads on Google, right? I can go down the world is falling apart and I really should be hospitalized. And it's that way to the wrong side one way. Or I could go the opposite direction where, this is maybe I found a site that's not giving me right information and I should be paying closer attention to this. And this is telling me I'm fine. So if I find enough of the really good sources and people on social media, then I'm going to get good information that's going to help feed my soul. And that's important because today it's much harder to find our tribe out in the world physically. It's just harder. People don't go out as much or don't gather as much as we used to. The world is a little bit different than it used to be. So you may have to find your tribe on social media. And that can be a really great thing, right?
Yeah.
Amazing, right? I was watching a TED Talk the other day, and the woman giving the TED Talk said a really cool quote about social media that I thought was really interesting. And she said the first part of this quote was a quote that she heard from somebody else, and she kind of altered it at the end. But she said, "Nothing of me is original. I'm a combined effort of everyone I've ever known and the content I've surrounded myself with." Right? And Eva Amin was her name. "Nothing of me is original. I'm a combined effort of everyone I've ever known and the content I've surrounded myself with." And I kind of mic dropped it. I'm like, girl, that's it, right? I am, I am a product of what I allow myself to be around. It's my choice. It's my choice. I'm choosing, Crockett, what I'm going on social media and searching. I'm choosing who I follow. I'm choosing who I unfollow, right? That's my choice. And I am a product emotionally, mentally, of all of these choices. It's not social media's fault. It's me. It's me.
That's a mic drop moment right there. I don't know where we're supposed to go from there, Amy Allenson-Dunman. That was great. You got me all jacked. I feel like I'm in a halftime speech. I'm ready to go out and run through the wall for coach right now.
Let's go.
Well, listen, I thought this was an excellent conversation. Certainly, we could elaborate more on, I think a great conversation would ultimately maybe be, as we mentioned, that 90% spending more than 2 hours on social media, the idea of social media as an addiction, I think would be a great conversation to have
Yeah.
down the road. I actually found some great apps that could help. I find myself, especially with work, constantly looking for stories and things to tell on the air and do all these things. And every once in a while, my wife will hit me and just be like, life is going on around you. So certainly that is one of the conversations that we could have down the road.
Yeah.
For sure. But this was, I think, a good one. And you mentioned the asphalt, and they hear us when we're talking.
Uh-huh.
So I just want to say the Just Start the Conversation podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts. If you could like, subscribe, and review, that would be great. What a great podcast that is.
It's fantastic.
The Just Start the Conversation podcast. So Amy, as always, thank you, my friend. But listen, you mentioned 40 episodes. I think this is our first one, just the two of us.
I know.
Here.
Why did it take so long?
I know, it couldn't have gone worse.
Right.
It is the Just Start the Conversation. I'm kidding. It was excellent. It's the Just Start the Conversation podcast. It is brought to you by St. Luke's Penn Foundation. You can visit pennfoundation.org. For my friend, Amy Ounson Dundon, you are an original. I don't care what that quote said. You are an original. But for you, my friend, thank you as always. I appreciate talking to you today.
Thank you. You as well. It was great to talk with you about this. And I think if I think about that last quote, and if I'm a combined effort of the content I've surrounded myself with, then I should be a whole lot of Eagle sports.
Yeah, well, go Birds.
Go Birds.
Well,
go Phils.
If they win or lose, that could be a whole nother social media conversation, because you get down a real rabbit hole if it doesn't go well.
My goodness.
It is the Just Start the Conversation podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. Be well.